Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really excited to be here with you at the Gateway Gulf Investment Forum. Our session is entitled Next Generation Logistics Connecting Cluster Markets. This session will look at how digital transformation, smart infrastructure, and multimodal integration are redefining logistics, not just for efficiency, but as engines of economic growth. Joining me are two leaders who live this transformation daily. Geraint Evans, CEO of the UK Major Ports Group, representing ports that handle about 80% of the UK's trade, and Keith Svendsen, CEO of APM Terminals, a global powerhouse in port and terminal operations. And let me start with you, Keith, and let me ask you, you oversee operations across continents. What do you see driving the next generation of logistics, and what are the major shifts that are changing how goods are moved and where they're moving?
So I think there's some very important shifts happening. To just mention one, the emergence of India on the world stage as an export powerhouse, and thereby modernization of its ports, the same with Pakistan and Bangladesh. And I think actually for the Gulf, this is very important given that the traditional port model here has serviced these countries. So I think in the future to come, a lot of that transshipment is going to be handled by the country itself. So that's one trend, and the other one is that for supply chain robustness, Southeast Asia is growing a lot, Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia. So there is a diversification happening around trade.
Geraint, are we in the midst of a perfect storm in the world of today? And how do you see the different forces interacting and also affecting decisions of ports to invest and operate?
I think with change, and the geopolitics and geoeconomics of ports and shipping is going to change a lot over the next 5, 10 or 15 years, which I think will dictate the next 100 years of what we're all doing in our ports around the world. But I think that's an opportunity. And I think for countries like Bahrain and other countries in the GCC, I think there's a real opportunity. But the need for integrated supply chains, the need for the ability to move our goods, and expectations from our customers are growing on a daily basis to make sure we're delivering, and as Bahrain as a connector or super connector, I think the opportunities are exciting. But the headwinds are something we all manage on a daily basis. But I think change is good.
Keith, can the Gulf actually work and operate as an integrated logistical hub, integrated ecosystem? What would that look like in practice, and what role would Bahrain play in that, building on what?
So I think actually the GCC has a great opportunity to move up the logistics chain by integrating its practices around the electronic movement of documents and money and trade across the countries, and really integrating the sea side of the operation with the land and with air, as we just saw in the last segment. And I think for Bahrain particular, we operate the port here. I mean, you're looking at the country's 2030 strategy and the 9 drivers that will drive that, and you're talking about up to $1 billion of additional GDP and thousands of jobs. So there's really good opportunities to integrate in this region.
Keith, I think you want to add to that.
Well, I think that Bahrain has done the most important thing. It has recognized that freight and logistics is an absolute key driver of future growth for this country and the area as well. And in the UK, we can do better at this. We haven't quite put freight and logistics right at the center of economic development. But Keith and I were talking earlier about other countries like Morocco and Egypt, where they've done this and are now reaping the rewards from that. And I think Bahrain has the same opportunity. But they've done the most important thing is recognize the role of logistics is key to delivering future prosperity.
Clusters across Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, UAE, would really help amplify maybe the region's role in the global trade business. Do you think this is of high national interest?
I do, and I think that, as I said, there's never been a more exciting time to be involved in maritime and ports. I think we are at a point of pivotal change, be it the energy transition, be it dual use, be it how we're all AI and digitalization are going to change. And for any government and any partner, working with great partners like APM in Bahrain, I think there's never a more important time. So as I said, not every government gets this, but I pay credit to the minister. I know he's celebrating his first anniversary as the minister, but I pay credit because they've recognized working with the right partners and putting it right at the center of what comes next.
Keith, as trade flows from China to Southeast Asia, India, Africa, draw for me the map of opportunity as you see it in the long term and where the Gulf sits in that map.
So trade has always been a outcome of economic output, right? And the world plans to have bigger economies in the future, and therefore trade will be larger. And 90% of all trade is seaborne. And like Bahrain has done for hundreds of thousands of years, it's traded and will continue to trade. I think in the short term, Bahrain's real opportunity is to really become even better at being a gateway into Saudi and really find a way to help that economy grow and become a trading corridor into the kingdom. And I think both technology, capability, infrastructure, and really talented people to operate these supply chains are going to be critical for driving that trade into new heights of success.
Keith, you mentioned that investors are often asking how far are we from a port before taking investment decisions. How are ports playing more pivotal roles in growth of different sectors of the economy?
I think, and just quickly on Keith's point on infrastructure, I look at Bahrain and some of these countries with slight envy. You know, our ports in the UK are older than Manchester United Football Club, older than Wimbledon tennis tournament, so we have some quite historic infrastructure, which is a good thing, but it does present challenges. So I think the opportunity in places like Bahrain is you have the time, you have the space, you have the ability to really, really develop, and I know you're building infrastructure for the next 50 years, and I think that's an opportunity. But again, coming back to your question, I'm really, really impressed with the level of detail that investors are looking at when they're talking about inward investment and FDI into the UK and into Europe and into other markets. The question is, what is the infrastructure like? How close are we to a port? How integrated is it? How can we work closely as real estate as much as the port facilities? And I think for the smartest international investors, the proximity to a port that has capabilities is absolutely essential in terms of what comes next. And I think that whether you talk about nearshoring, reshoring, all these opportunities, I think for any international investor, if you're not near to a port, I would ask the question, why not?
Is Morocco perhaps an example of putting a port in the heart of a national development strategy?
I pay tribute to the Moroccans because I have seen they've taken a strategy, and Keith knows very well on this as well. 15 years ago, Morocco was doing about $0 in automotive, $0 roughly. It's now doing about over $20 billion a year in automotive. The reason is because Tangier Med, pay credit to APM on building a great project, but integrated between the two big automotive factories. And they produce now, I think, 650,000 vehicles. Not a single car moves by road. It's integrated rail connectivity to and from the port. It is the most slickest and the most professional effort I've seen. And I would also say I took colleagues of mine who've been in the ports business for 35 years to Morocco, and they couldn't quite believe what they saw. And I pay tribute to that. And not only the work they're doing down in Dakhla. Maybe you've got some other views on Morocco.
Yeah. Actually, I wanted to follow with you on what lessons this holds for a country like Bahrain. How is it possible for Bahrain to weave the port story into its broader diversification and economic plans?
So we are lucky enough to have been part of this story from the beginning and operating most of the assets in the port. It's actually a very simple story to tell, but very difficult to do in reality.
Yeah.
So it starts with the national strategy for what Morocco wanted to do. Then it created the vehicle to get it done, and then they did very successful public-private partnerships, and then they executed this consistently over many, many years. And today, I think we have, and I agree here, a very successful execution of that strategy. And on top of that, like in Bahrain, they have also decided that the energy will become clean, so it's future-proof, right? Like the projects we're doing here. So it's a very impressive execution of national strategy, and it speaks to the point that logistics assets is a means to deliver that product, not an end.
Yeah.
Can actually putting the Bahrain port in the midst of a strategy help create new avenues for growth, new sectors, new economic engines for the economy?
So we are, together with the Transport Ministry here in Bahrain, we have been collaborating on making a new maritime strategy for Bahrain in support of the country's vision. And there's 9 very specific levers that can be pulled to grow the economy of the country. And we will play a part of that with the port, but it's really to think about the whole thing as an ecosystem and how to digitize that system, how to make sure you have the right cost of energy to that system, and how regulation and private parties' incentives get aligned. And when you get that effect, you can really move mountains, and that's what the Moroccans has done. Yes. I think your own country has done similar things. Yeah. So there's really success cases around the world where when you get these things right, good things happen.
Keith makes a great point, and I think the lesson for Bahrain and other countries is, I used to work in government, and so see the challenges on both sides, both in the private sector and in government, is not only to put ports and logistics at the center of your economic strategy, but understand what we mean by long term. Define long term, and don't worry too much about the day-to-day politics of ministerial challenges and all the rest of it, but stick to the plan and execute. Because we are in the business of 10, 15, 20, 25 years. The challenge sometimes is governments often moving around 2, 3 years. I don't mean Bahrain, but in other countries, and we've suffered from this in the UK. You've got to commit to it and absolutely find the right partners, and whether you work in fully private or as in a concession arrangement, I think that is a real opportunity, and this is all to play for in Bahrain, all to play for.
Very much.
Keith, Geraint, let me stay with you, because we mentioned automation, digitization. Now, besides the buzzwords, but artificial intelligence, really, digitization, what are they bringing to ports efficiency? What are they adding to ports operations?
I feel very strongly that as the hype and buzz around AI subsides over the next couple of years, and we see about the real sectors that will benefit. Firstly, we've been doing it for the last 10 or 15 years. We're using artificial intelligence to identify efficiencies, identify areas where we can use our facilities, and you think about even just the port footprints. How are we doing that is a really impressive point. But if I point to a couple of examples where it's going to be coming forward quite quickly, DP World has just launched what they're calling a box bay, which is both in Dubai and just been announced in London Gateway. It's effectively just think of a giant vending machine. So 16 stories of boxes, and the AI, intelligence and automation will make the efficiency of how we move and move the goods around our port in a completely different way. How we're automating on the land sides and using automated tractors and cranes and all these other things, I think is a real opportunity. But we will come back in 2 or 3, 5 years and say, which were the sectors that actually used AI in commercial applications? I think it will be ports and shipping.
Keith, how deep are we into that journey, given that this sector is a rather conservative and classical sector?
I think that's the nice description. It's a very conservative sector. When I talk about the ports, I think we are at the beginning of this journey. If I talk about my own company, we have digitized our operation like many others. And in recent years, we have done these digital twins of our operation, including here in Bahrain, so you can kind of simulate the operations before it happens and optimizing it. And the next thing that will happen is that AI will be added to the scheduling and planning of these very large systems. And I think that will unlock new efficiency and new capacity. And the fact is that in many places of the world, there's just not more space to build. Yeah. There's no, and in many governments, there's no money to spend to build large-scale infrastructure. So I think in many places, our job really is to get more efficiency out of the structure that's already there. And we're doing some exciting work in that space.
Given the capital intensity, is this the perfect time for PPPs, public-private partnerships?
I think the PPPs in this sector, that the World Bank came up with a long time ago has been incredibly successful. And I think we'll need to continue to evolve these documents so they align interests between nation states and the economies these assets serve, but I think it's a very successful model for governments to operate their critical infrastructure.
Geraint, what's a smart port?
Slightly subjective in terms of what you think is a smart port, but I think, as Keith said, and it's particularly acute in the UK, where we are often on quite a tight footprint, where we have some quite traditional infrastructure, and how we maximize efficiency. And I think we've got a long way to go on some of these, actually.
Yeah.
Is that, in some areas I look at it, I think this is amazing what we're doing, but in other areas you think, on that asset, are we really making that as productive as possible? But we're coming a long way on that. So I think it's the mixture of having the right strategy coming from the owning group, a clarity on deconflicting, because what we have in a lot of the UK ports is quite a complex site. So we spend a lot of time deconflicting, whether that's crews, again, some military considerations, which will have to be very clearly set out, as well as cargo and everything else like that. So a smart port, to me, is one that has that absolute clarity and can respond to customer needs. And again, as we were touched on earlier, where we have challenges with weather and climate change, the ability to adapt quickly and to solve that problem for that customer in minutes, hours, not days and weeks, is what I define as a smart port.
This brings me to energy transition. Are we living a decarbonization gap?
And again, I'm talking slightly from a UK perspective here, but I think there's a couple of points on this. We haven't historically in the UK and Europe given enough thought to how we actually transition. And I mean power and grid connections. The second bit is we have to be really careful on the net zero agenda that we have to take the public with us on some of this stuff, because we can't just decarbonize in a way that adds additional expense and adds friction to what we're doing on our ports. But at the same time, I think that there's a real opportunity, but I think we have to let the market lead on this a little bit and find our way, because it's effectively doable, but we've got to do it in a way that makes these ports sustainable in terms of finances.
Keith, you pledged net zero by 2040. The electrification of the port of Bahrain is a reality. What lessons can we draw? Also, on that point, you have in your fleet green ships. Are they making economic sense?
So if I start with the ports, I think for me, we have moved on in our company and also in the port sector in general to look at this as a political statement to becoming a practical problem. And we have all decided we want the future of ports is electrification.
Yeah.
And just a few years ago, it was not possible to do this. And we created some industry alliances with our competitors to really solve some of these technical problems. And I think collectively, we are very happy that within a few years, we actually changed the cost parity between existing technology and electrified machines. And here in Bahrain, we are running 100% on that and producing our own power. So problem solved. Now the next problem will be how to generate enough green electricity to service this industry and in general. So, and different places have different challenges. Here we build our own power plant by solar, and the surplus energy we give free back to the grid, and hopefully somebody in Bahrain can use that to do interesting things.
A quick word from you, Geraint, about how you can remain attractive for young talent as the digitization deepens. And your message perhaps for the Gulf future workforce.
We were talking about this earlier. I think, I'm someone that came into the sector 4 or 5 years ago, having got to know it through various bits around the UK and Europe over the years and regional economic development. I think that it's one of the most important, most exciting sectors you can get into, because as I said, the next 5 or 10 years will dictate the next 100 years. And if you want to be part of that change, I think it's a great sector. And the types of jobs we're doing in ports now are very different to 5 years ago and very, very different to what they were 30 years ago. Any thoughts on that, Keith?
No, I think it's a wonderful sector, and I think typically when we get people to come in, they don't leave again. So the challenge is to get the young and talented to join us. And we opened a new port last week in Rijeka in Croatia, and all the people working the terminal had no experience with stevedoring before. And gender diverse, very smart young people. And rather than sitting in noisy equipment, they're sitting in control rooms and operating the equipment, and they at least said that they were having a lot of fun doing it. So I really, we are investing a lot of money in educating people and attracting, and so far it's not a problem, but every generation needs to fall in love with transportation.
Yes. 3 seconds,
3 seconds.
literally, we're out of time.
Just an example of that in the UK, we have women coming back into the workforce after having children and now working from home, operating cranes from home.
Oh.
That is very different
That's
to
very
what we were doing 10 years ago.
Thank you, Geraint and Keith, for a very, very interesting conversation. I think if there's one takeaway, it's perhaps that the Gulf's advantage is not in any one single port. Perhaps it's in connected ports where Bahrain can play a pivotal role, being at the crossroads of trade, linking ideas, goods, and also the whole region. Thank you very much. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.